He's my four-legged child. And he's very, very in need of mommy today, if you could not tell. Every time after he's done eating, whoops, I got to shut that off. Every time he gets done eating, he makes sure he comes to me and gives me kisses and love to thank me for the food he's got. So that's this little handsome fella, Bentley. And I'll apologize in advance for the barking I am sure he's going to do. All right. So with today's webinar is going to be on aging hormones and menopause. And I would love to give huge kudos to Angela, my current dietetic intern, who did an absolutely fantastic job in putting this together. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. I'm going to put some links to articles and some handouts in the chat box. And then you can also, and I'll put my email address in there so you can email me privately if you'd like some of the handouts that we can provide you with after the webinar. I'll have some in the box. And what other logistics do I need to take care of? I'm going to have my video off during the presentation because, as you can see, I'm completely distracted and partially covered by this handsome fella. And I want to welcome everyone on YouTube. And without further ado, Angela is going to show her pretty face for a few moments before we fully get to the webinar. All right, Angela, let's see that mug of yours.
All righty. And can you guys see me?
Nope.
Nope. Let me see.
Oh, it shows that we should see you. I don't know. I don't know why we're not.
Oh no. How can I show myself? My camera's on.
Let's see, stop video, and then let me start video. Ask to start video.
How about now?
Nope. I guess we're just not going to see Angela quite yet.
All righty. Well, that was not the plan, but hello everybody. How you guys doing today? All right, so I'm just gonna begin. As Karen mentioned, my name is Angela, and today our presentation will be about aging, hormones, and menopause. So on today's agenda, we'll be talking about what menopause is, the different hormones that are affected, how it affects the body, possible symptoms, things that can alleviate those symptoms, and ways to manage it. But before I can even begin, we must discuss the elephant in the room. It would have made a lot more sense if you guys could have seen me, but I am only 22 years old. So clearly, I'm a few decades ahead of the timeline of even thinking about menopause, much less even talking about it. But hopefully today I can still talk about it and it doesn't take away from us being able to discuss and just share some information about menopause and its effects. Now, menopause. So with menopause, there are 3 different stages. The first stage being perimenopause. Perimenopause, unfortunately, can last up to 10 years. Exciting, I know. And you can experience the same or similar symptoms as menopause, including hot flashes, one of the many common symptoms I hear of. This stage typically begins between your early to mid 40s, but can start as early as your 30s. But of course, it depends on each and every single person. There are things that you can do that will help alleviate those symptoms as tips that we will get to discussing a little bit later. During perimenopause, you will still menstruate, but your cycle may begin to change from your normalcy. For example, they can become either longer or shorter, or heavier or lighter. So these are some of the things you can already begin to see. Now with menopause, it starts when, of course, perimenopause is over, and it'll be when you have not had a period for 12 months or more. And it starts to be a decline in your reproductive hormones, such as estrogen. And you are now officially out of those childbearing years, quote unquote. I know, the famous phrase we always hear. Even in my 22 years old, you already start getting those words thrown to you like, oh my gosh, please make sure you're setting everything up for those childbearing years. You're so young. So it just seems like that phrase never gets old with people. But you will experience probably a lot of the same symptoms that
Angela, you cut out. We can't hear you. Angela, we still can't hear you. We'll give Angela another moment to reconnect. You know how internet is. Let's see. I'll check my text messages. Oops, she disconnected, so she'll be coming back in a moment. Okay, so I'll have Angela pick up when she gets back. Let's keep this moving along. All right, let's see. Okay. So Angela was just talking about the different stages of perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause.
Hello.
Oh, you're back.
Oh, sorry about that, everybody.
All right, I was just about to take over and have you join back in, so just continue where you were.
Okay, what was the last part that was able to be heard? Just to make
we heard about the different stages of menopause and that you started in that the symptoms were the same. So should I go to the next slide?
No, not just yet.
Okay.
So I can't remember exactly where I left off, but with menopause, you can feel some of the symptoms that you experienced during perimenopause. But as I mentioned, if you were one of the lucky few who had little to no symptoms, those symptoms can start to occur during this time. And menopause usually begins between your 40s to your 50s. Now, postmenopause. Postmenopause is the last stage, and as the name implies, it is after someone has gone through menopause. Again, some of these symptoms that you may experience during the first or second or both stages, you can now feel again in this last stage. And you are no longer able to reproduce due to no longer being able to ovulate, which essentially just means your ovaries no longer release eggs. All right, so since we keep talking about the symptoms, let's get a little bit into what those symptoms may be. As mentioned, symptoms can be different for everybody with the different stages. You may experience some symptoms, you may experience all, you may experience them commonly. Sometimes it can be mild, sometimes it can be extreme. It all really just depends. But some of these symptoms do include hot flashes, sleep problems, mood changes, and these mood changes can result in even some potential anxiety and depression. You could have vaginal and bladder problems, decreased fertility, and unfortunately, a bit more.
But you know, it'd be interesting, Angela. I know we didn't talk about this, but if people would put in the chat box what symptoms they have had of perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause to kind of see what everyone has felt. What do you think?
Yes.
All right. So, but continue on while people post the different symptoms that they've had.
All righty. So yes, these are some of the symptoms that you can experience. Of course, I have not gone through this process yet, but just from overhearing it and having people in my life who've experienced this, one of the main ones I hear is about hot flashes, and we will discuss that a little bit further. But what even causes all of these changes? Well, these changes occur due to an increase or decrease of hormone production. Now, there are many hormones in the body, but we will mainly discuss three because these three are the ones to seem to have the most changes in the body. Stimulating hormone, testosterone, and estrogen. We're not going to address hormonal replacement therapy in this specific presentation as some of the typical menopausal changes may be mitigated by these treatments. There was a recent article in the New York Times that addressed hormone replacement therapy and the recent increase in use. Now, follicle stimulating hormone, one of the hormones we will get to discussing, also commonly referred to as FSH, is one of the 3 main hormones that change during menopause. It helps manage the menstrual cycle and stimulate the ovaries to produce eggs. It increases during menopause, which can cause some differences in the body, such as menstrual irregularities and even renal dysfunction or bladder issues. The increase during menopause also helps aid in the redistribution of body fat composition. This hormone production increases because of the decrease in estrogen. During this presentation, we will see a trend of how changes in one aspect of the body greatly impacts other functions and production of the body, specifically with estrogen. But we will discuss that a little further. Now, I want to see if you guys catch on to a theme or a pattern that we will see during this presentation. But the next hormone is testosterone. Similar to FSH, testosterone production also increases, again, as a result of decreased estrogen. Did you guys catch that? Are you guys already kind of starting to hear about the pattern, the repetition, especially about estrogen? Now, estrogen plays a large impact on the body during menopause, even affecting the production of other hormones, such as testosterone and FSH, as we already discussed. So this is the main hormone that we will discuss in this presentation. Estrogen is a hormone produced by ovaries and promotes the development and maintenance of female characteristics of the body. As we mentioned, estrogen production decreases while testosterone and FSH production increases. The decrease in estrogen affects many other parts of the body, including calcium absorption, reduced collagen production, blood vessel function, and more. These changes then result in increased risk of certain diseases such as cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, diabetes, and dyslipidemia. But decreased estrogen can also cause changes in body fat distribution and makes it harder to lose weight. Speaking of weight, it is important to note that weight changes and fluctuation can occur both due to menopausal hormone differences and also just due to the natural aging process. Exciting, I know. It's both. A lot of these changes are similar to one another. Yes, because dealing with one was not hard enough to deal with. But for example, it makes it harder to lose weight. Typically, women hold their weight in the lower portion of their bodies, including their gluteal-femoral region, which means their butt and their thighs. But after menopause, the fat composition changes and they'll put more weight in their abdomen, also known as the stomach, as a result of a decrease in estrogen. This results in body fat accumulation in the midsection, trunk, and abdomen, also referred to as trunk fat mass storage, or TFM. Aging typically leads to increase in body fat and weight for reasons discussed later. But both of these changes can cause an increase in health issues. Again, the best of both worlds, because one wasn't enough. This increase in abdominal fat can lead to being overweight or obese. The abdominal obesity can then lead to insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, dyslipidemia, which then could cause risk for cardiovascular disease, which is the main cause of mortality for postmenopausal women. Now, your body is going through all these changes, your weight could be fluctuating, and you may not be able to understand or even familiar with these changes. So let's get to become a little bit more familiar with them and the different values. Now, to figure out body fat, we use BMI, also known as body mass index. It's the commonly used measurement to help indicate body fat, but does not take into consideration fat distribution. BMI is calculated by taking your weight and dividing it by your height using the metric system. It has some merit guidelines, but there are discrepancies, such as if you're a bodybuilder, you'll generally have an overweight or obese body mass index, even though you're relatively fit. But these are the general guidelines we go by. However, some people may fall through the cracks because it doesn't accurately represent what you may look like or how your body is. In addition, there are also different ranges for different age groups. For example, in ages 18 to 64, normal weight would be between 18.5 to 24.9. But in people 65 and older, the normal would be 23 to 29.9. Typically, older adults will have slightly more body fat due to the biological and hormonal components, as we mentioned earlier. But this is not all bad because a slightly higher BMI can help protect bones, which become weaker as a result of osteoporosis. It also provides extra cushion in case of falls and helps minimize the risk of malnutrition. Another measurement we could use is waist circumference. Waist circumference is a better indicator for intra-abdominal fat and metabolic risk than BMI. Because as we mentioned, BMI does have the discrepancies. So this is a situation where we could use waist circumference if your BMI isn't accurately represented, especially since BMI does not take fat distribution into consideration. Now, to determine your waist circumference, you can measure the midpoint between the lowest rib and the iliac crest, also known as the top of your hip bone. Here you can see some of the measurements. Now, one of the last measurements we will discuss will be waist to hip ratio. And waist to hip ratios, there are studies that suggest that this is a better indicator of cardiovascular risk and mortality compared to BMI. Again, here we see the ratios. There are more accurate tests out there to measure body fat, such as MRIs and DXAs. However, they are a little bit less accessible considering they are a higher financial cost and radiation exposure. Hence why we typically stick to these three measurements. Okay, so along with weight changes, we can also experience some changes in hair and skin and things of that nature. And this again has to do with the decrease of estrogen and natural aging. Just in case some of you missed the theme, a lot of the things that we will be talking about are a result of a decreasing estrogen. And in this case, we see it again. A decreasing estrogen leads to a decrease in collagen. Unlike estrogen, testosterone, and FSH, collagen is not a hormone. It is a protein, the most abundant protein in the body. It is found in your hair, your skin, muscles, cartilage, tendons, and more. It helps make tissue strong and resilient and able to withstand stretching. The decrease in collagen production causes changes in skin elasticity and hair fullness, and possibly can result in drier skin, skin irritability, dark spots may appear, and wrinkles as a result of the skin not being able to bounce back like it used to. The go-to when there's a change in your hair or your skin is typically to take supplements, which is understandable. However, these supplements are inconclusive, whether it be collagen or biotin. The effects of these supplements are inconclusive, rather I say. There is no information that can fully confirm if taking collagen can help with the skin and hair changes you may encounter. You can still try these supplements though to see if they work for you. Just make sure you choose supplements wisely and see if it helps. When picking a collagen supplement, look for a label from USP or NSF, not to be mistaken with UPS. The label of these two companies on the supplements show that the ingredients have been verified by an independent lab, so they are more likely to work and you're getting what you pay for. Other options are topical solutions such as lotions, creams, oils, again, things we typically go to when we start experiencing these changes. In addition, we have foods such as bone broth, facial massages, and more in attempts to try to boost that collagen production again. But again, these results may vary, but you can still try it out to see what works for you. But just make sure if you are trying them out, that your expectations are in line with these potential lack of results. In addition, a decrease in estrogen production results in less calcium absorption, which then results in weaker bones and even more serious issues such as osteoporosis. Estrogen is essential to bone health because it promotes the activity of osteoblasts. Osteoblasts are cells that produce bone with the help of calcium. A decrease in estrogen results in a decrease in osteoblasts. A decrease in osteoblasts reduces calcium absorption. Increased calcium, however, can help compensate for these osteoblasts, which is why it's important that we take sufficient calcium during the day, either it be with food, which is more preferable, or even some supplements to make sure that we can compensate for these osteoblasts. Now, you do need at least around 1,200 milligrams of calcium per day. Thankfully, calcium is in a lot of products such as dark leafy greens, almonds, figs, calcium fortified drinks such as juices or soy products, dairy products such as milk, yogurt, cheese, fish with bones such as sardines, canned salmon. So see, you have a lot of options for calcium. If you are taking calcium supplement, just ensure that you're taking at least 500 milligrams at a time. Otherwise, it won't get absorbed. Now, there are other nutrients that can help aid in calcium absorption, such as vitamin D and K, as well as minerals such as phosphorus, potassium, and magnesium.
Well, one quick little thing before we move on.
Yeah.
Just to clarify that it's only 500 milligrams at a time, because if you take more than that, then it potentially won't get absorbed.
Yes.
I know that that's what you meant, but that's not what came out.
Thank you for the clarification.
No worries. Okay, muting again.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to discuss heart health. And as mentioned early in the presentation, there is a higher risk of cardiovascular disease because of the natural aging process, and as well as hormonal changes because of the decrease in estrogen, as well as the abdominal fat that begins to get stored. So we want to talk about heart health as a way to try to combat these issues. So as we discussed earlier, decreased estrogen causes some issues with cardiovascular disease, and that is because estrogen helps keep blood vessels flexible and helps pump blood through our body. So a decrease in estrogen results in blood vessels becoming stiffer, which is what can increase the risk of these diseases. To combat this, we want to eat certain foods that can help avoid plaque buildup, such as fruits and vegetables. Specifically, the antioxidants in fruits and vegetables help reduce the risk of heart disease by reducing the buildup of plaque from cholesterol and other substances in the arteries. Fiber also helps take cholesterol out of the blood and into the stool. Now, we're going to go back a little bit to some of the symptoms we experience, which is hot flashes, one of the most common, or at least from what I hear of, and one of the most annoying symptoms that can be experienced. Now, again, following the theme, hot flashes are a result of a decrease in estrogen. When there's a decrease in estrogen, it causes the hypothalamus to become more sensitive to body temperature change. Now you may be thinking, what is the hypothalamus? Think of the hypothalamus as essentially your body's thermostat. It is what helps regulate the internal temperature in your body. When your body believes it's too hot, it causes a hot flash to help you cool down, similar to a fever. Now think back to fevers, which we've all experienced. When your body is trying to fight off infections, your body heat begins to increase. In order to help you cool down, your body warms up in order to allow you to sweat, and that is what helps you cool down. Essentially, the same occurs with hot flashes. Due to the sensitivity of temperature, when you become too hot, you will get a hot flash in order to help you cool back down. Now, what causes the body to raise its temperature? Dilated blood vessels. This can occur as a result of eating certain foods, which is why it is best to avoid them in order to avoid a hot flash. But thankfully, there's also foods that can help minimize hot flashes. So not everything is a trigger. So what is a food trigger and why do they trigger these hot flashes? Now, there are 4 main types of food triggers, typically spicy foods, alcohols, hot liquids such as tea, soups, coffee, and then the last one will be caffeinated drinks such as coffee, black or green teas, soda, energy drinks, and more. Now, reducing these foods can help not only alleviate hot flashes, but also other symptoms such as sleep disturbances and mood changes. And that's just because it allows your body not to get hot or overly hot, so then your body won't have to go through the process of getting even hotter to help cool down. So some of these food triggers are different for everybody though, similar to the symptoms. Some people may have multiple triggers. Some people may have minimal. Some people may have one trigger. For example, you could have a trigger to coffee, whereas another person may have no trigger to coffee. It really just depends on the person. And sometimes it can be a lot or very overwhelming to keep track of what. So one method to make this easier would be a food journal. Now with a food journal, it can be electronic or typical pen and paper, whatever your preference is. You can jot things down, again, whether virtually or on pen and paper, to kind of keep track of your symptoms, what foods can cause these triggers, and it could just help manage it a little bit easier for it to not be so overwhelming.
What I would love to see in the chat box is people to put down what some of their triggers are for hot flashes. I know for myself, sometimes it's alcohol. And usually what triggers my hot flashes is after I eat. So when I eat, guaranteed within 5 minutes of finishing, I'm like a hot, sweaty mess stripping off all my clothes. And we've got
I am
someone else
thinking
saying here, it's
about
all of the
hot tea.
triggers. Someone saying hot tea. Oh, someone saying that there's a random, and that's where some of the journaling can help. Yeah, sometimes they are random. Like whether I sleep well at night or I don't, you know, it's all sometimes random, and everybody's body's different. All right, we'll continue to have people put their triggers in there, and I'll let you go back.
All right. Yeah, so it seems like you guys have been experiencing some of the typical triggers that occur, but thankfully there's not only triggers, but there's also foods and preventative measures that you can take to help alleviate hot flashes and other symptoms. Now, as mentioned, the reason why you get hot flashes is because of a decrease in estrogen, which affects the hypothalamus. So in order to counteract that, we want to eat foods that have similar properties of estrogen. Now, one compound that is structurally similar to estrogen is phytoestrogen. It can also help reduce cholesterol levels. Some foods high in phytoestrogen would be edamame, miso soup, soy products such as milk and yogurt, tofu, chickpeas, peanuts, barley, grapes, black tea. So I know some of you were saying, I'm eating a lot of the trigger foods. No worries. It does seem like there are a bunch of trigger foods, but there are also a bunch of foods that you can eat that hopefully won't set the same effects. But again, it's important to just keep track of it because, as some of you mentioned again, some foods could be random. So what might help alleviate symptoms for one person can not be as helpful with another person. So please try to utilize your food journals, whether it be a notebook, sticky notes that you put on the fridge just to remind you, whatever it may be. Now I'm gonna switch it off to Karen so she could talk about weight management and exercise.
And I was just going to type some things in the comment box with regards to the phytoestrogen foods. And miso is also great because it's a fermented food, as well as if you were to do tempeh, which is a fermented soy product. So that also helps you get your probiotics. And especially if you do yogurt, that even if you do soy yogurt, it will also have the probiotics in there. The chickpeas would give you the prebiotics because they are fiberful and they do have a good amount of protein in them, as well as the edamame. And I know we were telling you tea is a trigger because it can be hot, but for some it is, for some it isn't. If you have it more at room temperature or maybe iced, maybe that'll help. All right. So now we are going to move on to this weight gain. Ugh. I've experienced it myself, and I've been working over since the beginning of the year to try to figure out where I am with weight gain versus the changes in the visceral fat. I have always had button thighs, always, ever. I was working at Kmart at the age of 17. My older Polish manager goes to a 17-year-old. Oh, you've got childbearing hips. What every 17-year-old girl wants to hear. Absolutely. Well, now my belly has, I would always wear jeans and there would be like 2 inches off on the waist for it to fit my hips and thighs. Well, I don't have that problem anymore because now I have that visceral fat in my abdomen. And so why do we have the weight gain? There are a lot of, whoops, we jumped ahead there. I'm on the wrong screen. So we talked about the hormonal changes of the estrogen causing that visceral fat, and that visceral fat is metabolically active. So it's doing things to the insulin, it's doing things to the weight gain, and it's just not pretty. So not only do we have the estrogen working against us, we have that lean body mass, which we have less of to begin with than men, and it decreases after the age of 30. So as that decreases, that reduces your metabolic rate between 15 and 20%. Oh, this keeps on going. Don't worry. We have some positive news to get out of this. And then another idea to take into consideration is when you're younger, you tend to be more physically active just because you're out and about, you're doing things, perhaps you're chasing after young kids. And then as you reach the menopausal age, all of a sudden you're not running after those kids. Perhaps you're a little bit more sedentary if you're working. And so the normal activity that you would have in a typical day no longer exists. And it's sometimes difficult to find time to go to the gym to do the activity. We're also having less sleep. We have those sleep disturbances that were talked about in some of the problems that come with perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause, whether it be because you're having a hot flash, you have to get up and go to the bathroom, or because your dog barks and you can't fall back asleep because your neighbors slammed the door across the hall because they're in their 20s and they don't care. Oh, wait, that might just be me. Sorry. All right. So we talked about the interrupted sleep, and the lack of sleep also causes hormonal dysregulation, which could potentially lead to more food cravings. So this is one of the reasons why we all need to go to bed earlier. With the metabolism changes, we burn those fewer calories, which we talked about. The altered hormonal responses from the estrogen, the progesterone, the testosterone, and the FSH, which were previously mentioned. And we cannot forget about heredity. Yes, I mentioned earlier about the lack of collagen in these jowls that I'm getting. My sister always reminds me about how I'm getting my grandma Surday's jowls, but she has grandma Buchholz hook nose. So we're all getting something now, aren't we? And so we can't ignore the fact that we can't ignore what the role of genetics is. And we're going to look like our ancestors. There's not much that you could do about that, unless you're getting some plastic surgery, and Lord knows that's expensive. You know, there are some people who have a fast metabolism and they never put on a pound. And then there are those who look sideways at a donut and then they gain weight. What are you going to do? Most important, it's to try to stick with a healthy lifestyle and exercise regularly, whether or not there's weight loss with it. As we get older, people tend to go on more medications. With those medications, there can be weight gain. Some medications that do have weight gain are antidepressants, steroids, diabetes medications, and anti-seizure medications. They can make you retain fluid, reduce your metabolism. You'll feel hungrier, so you consume more food. Don't abruptly stop taking any medications. That's something that you can discuss with your primary care provider. And then there is inadequate protein. As we age, our dietary protein requirements could be a little bit higher. I know I work with the geriatric population, and for most people, we say 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram to 1 gram. And as people get older, we're going to increase that to 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram, because we don't want them to have protein calorie malnutrition, which can lead to a whole bunch of other problems. But it's also important to have the right kind of protein and focusing on healthy, lean proteins and plant-based proteins. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. We're monitoring that and we can answer that, or you can raise your hand or you can unmute yourself, just to let you know we're here to answer those questions. All right. Now, here is a chart that talks about the different amount of calories that we need as we age. You're going to get different answers going to different formulas that calculate your nutrient needs, because there are different formulas. And so this is just one of them that took a female who's 150 pounds and 5'4", which is 64 inches. That weight would be, I should have calculated this and I apologize for not doing that. I'm going to do a quick BMI calculation so you have that. And the way I'm going to do that calculation is I'm taking the 150 pounds, dividing it by 64 squared, and then I multiply that by 703, and you get a BMI of 25.7. So technically, going back to the slide that Angela had before, if it's a BMI of 25.7 and the person is between 18 and 64 years old, you'll see that they fall into the overweight category. If they are over 65, they would be considered normal weight. All right, we're going to go back forward. At the age of 20, this person could have 2,000 calories if they were somewhat active, doing light to moderate activity about 2 to 3 times a week. If they were completely inactive, then it would be 1,800 calories. As you can see, you follow the chart down, every 10 years, you're going down a good 50 calories a day that you need. So if, for example, at 60, well, let's use at 50, if you're consuming the same amount of calories you were at 20, that's an extra 200 calories a day, which would be an extra 1,400 calories a week, and it takes 2,500 calories to gain a pound. So that means you could be packing on the weight because you're consuming too many calories, because you're eating like you were when you were 20, which is what I've been doing for probably the last 3 years in my weight gain, which I'm now trying to take off. And then we also mentioned the idea of being more inactive. So if you look at the fact that when you were 20, you were pretty active, and now at 60, you're not as active, you should only be having about 1,600 calories a day. So if you're still consuming those 2,000 calories, that's an extra 400 calories a day. So you can see how we could potentially be gaining the weight as we get older, because we're consuming the amount of calories that we did when we were younger and or more active. So there's that. So we have some weight management and exercise. And what's the purpose of, I actually want to go to this slide for a minute, and then I'm going to go back. So people who, oops, oh, Bentley, he's all nuts. I'm going to blame him. So if you look at the number of calories you burn when you exercise, this is from when we did the sugar presentation. 14 teaspoons of sugar, which are in a soda, would take 49 minutes of brisk walking to burn that off. And just take a minute to look at this slide. I know this deals with a lot of sports drinks or drinks with calories, which you might say, I don't drink those, but just think about that. If you had a candy bar or a little snack pack that was 227 calories, even a little piece of chocolate, it could take you a half hour to walk that off. So that's something for you to keep in mind, that when you think that you're exercising, that you're burning off all these calories so you can eat extra food, you're really not burning off that much. But what are the benefits of exercise? And that's where this slide comes in. Well, those of you who know me know why I have this one in here. But those of you who know me know that that's not Bentley, because he certainly doesn't move fast most days. So oops. Oh, I am just having problems with my slides today. My apologies. So you want to look at the benefits of exercise. They help strengthen your bones so you can hold your sassy poses, and reduce the risk of fractures and osteoporosis. They reduce the risk of heart disease, reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes. This is when you have to check your finger sticks. And then they also put you in a better mood, just like looking at those dogs do. And it can also reduce the risk of cancer. It gets those dopamine and those endorphins going, which can make us all happier. What are the recommended amounts of exercise? The recommended amounts of exercise, according to the American Heart Association, is 150 minutes or more of moderate aerobic activity, or 75 minutes of vigorous aerobic activity, plus 2 days of muscle strengthening. It doesn't necessarily have to mean lifting weights. It could be doing push-ups against a wall or incline push-ups while I'm heating up my food at work. I'm doing incline push-ups on the counter, or when I'm printing out information, I am doing squats. One of my coworkers walked by and just looked at me and shook their head as they saw me doing squats by the copy machine. I'll also do them on the subway platform. You know, you got to fit it in when you can fit it in. You also want to make sure that you're doing stretching and balance activities, especially as you get older, because you want to remain limber. And by keeping the balance activities going, it can help to reduce your chance of falls, which can happen as you get older. All right, so now, drum roll. What is the best overall diet? Well, there really isn't one. There are different studies that are going on, whether it be low fat, low carbohydrate, high fat, high protein, and all these studies are just going on. The best thing that you can do for yourself for overall health is follow a Mediterranean diet, which is typically going to be low fat, and the fats that it does have are going to be the heart healthy fats. It has a lot of plant-based foods, which you know that I'm here at plant-based nutrition, and I'm not going to tell you not to eat meat, but you and me both need to eat more fruits and vegetables. It's full of antioxidants, anti-inflammatory foods, vitamins, and minerals. And there are so many existing studies that provide evidence in the reduction of heart disease, diabetes, fat mass, bone health. So that is a good diet to do. Angela, woohoo, put in the chat box, have any of you tried the Mediterranean diet before? And it doesn't necessarily have to be for a long time, or have you tried implementing it a little bit more? You're going to eliminate some of the red meats. You're going to have more of your healthy fish, fruits, vegetables, whole grains. And that is something that I can help you with. I have a meal planning program that will specifically put the Mediterranean diet in there for you. So the recipes that you get will be Mediterranean based, which can help with the inflammation, the cancer, the heart disease, and that visceral fat mass. I am now going to turn it back over to Angela.
Hello again. So thank you, Karen, for all that. And now we're just gonna get to the last bit of the presentation, which is mindfulness and acceptance. We have all been through these stages in our life when our body rapidly changes in a short amount of time, whether it be the initial hormonal changes of puberty or the latter hormonal changes of menopause. I think now that I'm 22, I'm getting close to what they call the second puberty of now to 25, especially when my brain's gonna fully develop. Very exciting. Not really, but you know. Overall, though, it can be stressful and overwhelming, and typically sometimes non-desirable because, again, there's a lot of changes in a short amount of time. But it is important to remember that these changes are normal and natural. In addition, they're not always bad. Even though they're not desirable, they do still have their benefits. For example, extra fat does have its risk, but it also has its benefits. Some menopausal symptoms can be relieved with the extra fat storage. This is because the fat cells produce the estrogen that the ovaries cannot. It also helps maintain bone health. So the fat is actually an estrogen helper and not an enemy. So it's good to see our bodies as our ally that are helping us and not enemies that we're trying to combat against. And now the most important thing to get from this whole presentation is to please, please, please be kind to yourself, have patience with yourself and your bodies while going through these changes, while trying to figure out different triggers or foods that can help, and also have compassion with your body during these changes. Of course, for the most part, again, as mentioned, these are not the changes you want, but please still remember that it is still your body, the body that's been with you for years, that's adapting to all these changes, and just try to nurture your body to the best of its abilities and be kind to it. And yeah, just make sure you give yourself a pat on the back every so often for keeping strong. But alrighty, that is the end of the presentation. We're gonna see here some resources and
Just one comment.
yes.
I just want to put special attention to what Angela put on the bottom, that please seek professional help if you need help, guidance, or support. I'm not just talking about me to help you go through this nutritionally, getting the right diet, but if you are suffering from any kind of depression, or you feel that you need some mental health help, there are so many resources out there. That is one of the positive things that came out of the pandemic, where there are a lot of online resources that you can go to for help. And if you do need some of that, I do have some of those resources, so please do reach out to me. I'm going to put my email address in the chat box, so you can reach out to me. Oops. If you need some resources to help you get what you need, even if it's just beyond nutrition. And I want to let you know that one of the things that I have done, I'll throw my video on for now. I don't have Bentley. Maybe if I can get the video up. So like I said, over the last couple of years from grad school to COVID, I had probably put on about 30 pounds. And I realized that it was not healthy and I needed to do something about it. So since the beginning of the year, the main thing that I have done is cut my portion sizes. With cutting my portion sizes alone, and I really haven't even increased my exercise all that much, I have managed to drop 10 pounds in about 6 weeks. Healthy weight loss is 0.5 pound to 2 pounds a week. And I know that at some point it's going to taper off a little bit more, and I will need to be a little bit more active. Being vegetarian helps. I've been focusing a lot more on fruits, vegetables, legumes, and really not eliminating desserts, but minimizing them, because they're not nutrient dense. And at this age, I need to really focus on foods that are nutrient dense, because I don't have the 2,000 calories a day, which is what I was consuming. And now I was consuming 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day. And now I've cut that down to about 1,500 calories a day. And it is showing on the scale and the way that my clothes fit. And it is making a difference, and that's going to be helpful on my joints. And I am probably going to stay in the overweight category, because I have never been a person who really could easily sustain normal body weight according to the BMI. So I need to respect my body, and I also want to have a good quality of life. And to be 135 or 145 pounds would not give me the quality of life that I want. So it's a juggling act and a balance that I need to do. So that's me preaching about me and what I've done, and that I figured I really need to walk the talk, because I'll blah about it all the time. But if I'm not going to actually, do what I say, then how can you respect me as your nutrition professional? So I have started. And I feel good about it. And please feel free to reach out to me, send me an email, and I'd be glad to help you walk through that and show you what I have to offer you. And as Angela was saying, thank you. And
Yes,
here are some of the resources that we got the information from. And I do want to let you know as well that I'm putting together an online course that deals with introduction to plant-based nutrition. And so that's going to be the main of it, talking about carbohydrates, proteins, fats, water, exercise, and what we need and how to focus it in plant-based. And then there are going to be special topics such as sugar and exercise, and how to become more advanced plant-based and things like that. So look for that in your email. Please make sure you send me your email address so I can add you in my newsletter. The great thing about the newsletter is that they always contain a recipe. And I want to thank Angela for her sancocho recipe that she made vegetarian. It is a traditional Dominican dish. Is that correct, Angela?
Yes, Dominican.
Yep. So, and she also did the savory oatmeal last week, which is a good reminder that we don't always need to have sweet for breakfast. And oatmeal could also be a dinner. Doesn't have to be just for, oatmeal's not just for breakfast anymore.
Yes, that's something I've been learning with getting different, not using the traditional breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because sometimes it can feel restrictive. Just whatever sounds good, whatever you think can help you intake more things such as fruits and vegetables. I know for example, my culture, we have certain foods that we eat any day, anytime. It doesn't really matter, which leads into another thing that you could try doing, which is trying different cultural foods. That's why I tried that East Asian meal with the savory oats. I'm Dominican, so sometimes it's easy to fall into our cultural foods, but try expanding a little bit, see what works. There's different cultures that have different flavors, some that are a little bit more healthier depending on your goals. So don't be afraid of trying things out, even if you're a picky eater. I'm
Selective eater.
Yes. We want to call it selective eater, but of course, that phrase has been thrown around at us a lot. So I did want to bring it up just in case some of you do fall under that category. But if you are a selective eater, I am one myself, and trying these things out, different cultures, different foods, not feeling so restrictive to societal norms has helped me a lot, just balance out my meals, feel healthier. So that's something you could try out too.
If you notice, I have some of the different things that I do with Epicure Nutrition, which I've talked about already. And if you're interested in the meal planning, it has an app that you can download, which I absolutely love. And I'm using this myself. So I am following my own program. And it really worked. It really works. And it's a lot of meal prepping. You get a calendar that looks something like this. It gives you a grocery list. You can check off what you already have at home, so it doesn't show up on your list. And these are a sample of what the recipes look like. And that's it. Are there any questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions. Please feel free to show your face if you want. I'll give it another minute. Oh, I do have one file to upload. You should have seen the New York Times article that I put in the chat box. I'll put it in there again if you didn't get it. And that's the article that talks about the hormone replacement therapy and how it got a bad rap from one flawed study, and how doctors are now reintroducing it again. But they do recommend that you do start it before the age of 30. And then let me upload a file that talks a little bit about exercise. And what I do have that I'm going to send people whose email that I have, we have another handout that will talk about the foods for hot flashes, what are the triggers, and what might help alleviate that. All right, let me find that file. This is the one that I want. Nope. There we go. Ugh. My computer. Downloads. And here's an exercise handout. So thank you very much. Be well. Reach out to me. You have my email, and I have some of your emails. And be well. Thank you for your time.